Hello everybody and welcome to the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development's Heritage Tourism Series. I'm Julie Avery. I'm one of the 7 people that are involved in the Heritage Tourism Initiative, and this series is in preparation and debuting an upcoming website of materials that will be available by the end of the month. The information on your screen posts the next several of the presentations in our series. Also, you can go to the North Central Regional Center's website and go under the webinar tab and find the recordings of these presentations as well as the PowerPoints before the presentations. And when our website goes up, then we will have a link to that website as well. Also, we are getting ready to send out an announcement about the website going public, and we're also interested in finding some folks who might like to assist us by checking out the site beforehand and giving us some critique or comment about it. So if you're interested in either of these things, would you let us know in the chat box? Put your email and just note if you'd like to be a reviewer or if you'd like the announcement, or just say both if you're game for both. This is the third in a series of 7 presentations about the Heritage Tourism Initiatives project that has brought together materials and information that will help encourage especially small towns and regions and clusters of communities to initiate planning around heritage tourism for themselves. As I just mentioned, the website should go live by the end of this month, and we'd like to be able to send you that information, and we'll post it in as many places as we can. For these presentations, the presenters will be the only ones with mics. If you have comments, please put them in the chat box, and there are several of us watching that, and we'll make sure that your questions or comments get addressed. Today's topic is initiating tourism for your community. I want to introduce to you our presenters. Both are from the University of Missouri, Connie Mefford and Dothage. And Connie has been a community development specialist in Benton County for over 16 years. Her work there focuses with rural communities, building sustainable local economies and a strong resource base. Connie's experience includes working with nonprofits, with volunteerism, and leadership development, and she provides workshops on hospitality, community assessment, and heritage tourism. An interesting project that Connie was involved in helping to develop is the Old Trails Regional Tourism Partnership. This is a 9-county collaboration in west central Missouri, encompassing sites and communities on both sides of the Missouri River. And their goal was to preserve and share the region's unique assets and values and build area and regional pride. Dothage is the Osage County Program Director and Human Development Specialist, and she's been with the University of Missouri for over 40 years. Kathy became involved in heritage tourism through her support of the Osage County Agritourism Council, which she helped to form in 2002. This council sponsored the Community Heritage Conference that was held in a small river town in Osage County in 2010. And this conference is what brought me into this mix and seeded what is happening now with this series and with our upcoming webinar. The council, the County Agritourism Council, also offers a Be a Tourist in Your Own County, where there are twice-a-year tours and hosts out-county bus tours. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Connie.
Okay, thank you, Julie. In our last session, a colleague of mine, which is with us today, Larry Dickerson, discussed how to assess your community for tourism. And he proposed
might turn up your mic, I'm
questions.
sorry.
Is that better? Is that better, Julie?
For me, would any of the participants like to weigh in the chat box?
Well, I see that Larry said yes, so I'll continue. So Larry proposed these 4 questions that you can see on your window. He stated that in order to move forward, a community first needs to have a clear vision of what kind of community they want to be. They need to be aware of what their assets are and how they can build on those assets for economic growth. When working through this planning process, if tourism is identified as a viable option, then the community needs to ask what kind of tourism best fits with our assets. For example, if a community is a small, rural farming community, then agriculture might play into their heritage. And so tourism with more of a agritourism site may be the best option, building on what they already have. In my county, we have a very small, it's very out of the way community that originated from a German settlement. So many of the descendants that still live in that area decided that they would like to build on their German heritage and design events and activities to draw visitors to their community. Over the last 10 years, this community has been fairly successful in bringing in economic opportunity by sharing their culture. In the process, they've also come to realize that by doing so, they have preserved many aspects of their German heritage. This leads us to Larry's last question. If heritage tourism is a good fit for your community, then how ready are you to implement it? This question leads us into identifying and evaluating the capacities of the community for tourism. Now, I know Larry also shared with you this list of community capacities, but I would like to take a moment or two to review them with a little more detail. There are several considerations when deciding if tourism is an economic strategy that a community wants to pursue. First, are the local citizens in favor of tourists visiting their community? If not, providing a warm and hospitable environment will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, depending on the degree of opposition. For hospitality to really work, the community needs the buy-in of the majority of its citizens, not just the business owners. The community will also need the support of financial institutions in order to help create and support new small business growth, and it will need the local government providing the support services necessary to handle large groups of visitors. For example, you hope that you will have a police department that will be willing to direct traffic and who will be friendly and courteous to your visitors. You hope that you will have fire departments that are willing to come and provide backup during activities and events. So tourism and visitors coming into a community really has to be viewed as a benefit to the community as a whole. And when the citizens view them as beneficial, then they're more willing to extend a more hospitable reception. Second, does your community have a stable economic base and the resources to implement tourism? Tourism cannot be implemented without cost, not only for the private tourist-related businesses, but also for the infrastructure and public facilities. Communities may have to add more public bathrooms. They might have to dress up their parks and things like this. So it's going to cost the community to really bring in large numbers of people and visitors. Tourism can also drive the prices of some things such as gas, food, and rental costs, as well as property values in a community. And this is usually where some of the opposition from local citizens stems from these fears So highlighting that the economic growth from the tourism may be needed in order to offset the increase of cost of living. So you can highlight things like there'll be, more public facilities available because the community will have those tax dollars to provide more recreation, more, other added facilities for its citizens. So anything like that can really help to convince the citizens that and see tourism as a worthwhile effort. Tourism also means diversification of the economic climate for a community. This often takes a real challenge or requires a change in the mindset of government officials. For example, if a community has been economically dependent for years on agriculture or, say, manufacturing, it will mean that the community leaders will have to adjust their thinking and come to view tourism as a viable and financially feasible economic strategy for the community. And this sometimes can be a real challenge when you're working with commissioners and other public officials. Tourism leaders will again have to highlight the broad prosperity that tourism can bring to the community and convince those government officials that tourism for many communities can act as an insurance policy against hard times and offer an additional means of income. Tourism can support a community when a traditional industry is under financial pressure, particularly where a community has relied heavily on a single industry. And I think right now we've coming out of a time when manufacturing and other sectors of our economic base has taken a real hit. And so by offering this diversification of their economic base, I think that it's a good time. I think commissioners are probably more open to it now than maybe they were several years ago. Third, who will plan and manage your community's tourism efforts? You have to look at, who's going to be your leaders. Will it be either a chamber of commerce, an overall community partnership, or an active economic development organization? It takes strong leadership to get things done and to assure that the tourism industry will be sustainable. It also takes a large group of volunteers who understand the benefits of tourism for their community. And tourism is ongoing, and so it's going to require a kind of a self-generating group of leaders and volunteers. So you're going to have those leaders and volunteers automatically recruiting or constantly recruiting new volunteers and new leaders so that you'll have that continuality of the and that sustainability of the tourism in the area. The fourth consideration is the workforce. Does your community have a sufficient workforce to support tourism businesses and provide the basics of visitor hospitality? Another question to consider is, does your community have access to educational services to train your workforce in working in the tourism industry? Because a lot of times businesses really don't know how to go about teaching their employees to be hospitable and how to handle disagreements or just to make people feel special and want that to return to that community. So having an idea of where you can get that kind of training and helping your businesses and your volunteers to be able to go through some of that training is really vital. The fifth consideration is how tourism will affect the environment of your community. Definitely when you bring in large groups of people, it's going to have an effect on the environment. Tourism can also lead to denied access of public facilities in the community, such as roads, parks, restaurants, shops, for the local citizens due to overcrowding. Tourism can also have a negative impact on the environment through excessive trash, pollution, and damage to natural areas. So therefore, considerable thought and planning need to happen in order to safeguard the natural beauty of the area and make tourist attractions desirable for everyone. This will also lead to future tourists because if the natural beauty of the area is taken away, then you've lost one of the very important assets that the community had that draws the tourists there. So you really want to have a very comprehensive plan, thinking through how you're going to handle these groups and so that you're going to make sure that no damage comes to the area. The sixth concern is the social capacities. Tourism is sometimes associated with people behaving inappropriately or being rowdy, disrespectful, engaging in drinking and drug use, and other criminal behavior. They're on vacation, and sometimes they let their hair down and they do things that they wouldn't normally do if they were home. So you have that to deal with. And so again, there needs to be considerable planning that needs to go into managing these situations so they do not lead to a deterrent for the other visitors or the local citizens. The seventh concern is having a sufficient tax base to support tourists. Tourists will require additional facilities and better maintenance of the current public facilities, such as roads, parks, and public transportation. Therefore, making sure that either the current tax base or the tax revenues is sufficient, or if there is the ability to expand the tax base in the community in order to ensure the future of tourism. The last two concerns are the marketing capacities and the local planning. Tourism requires ongoing marketing and planning. The community will need to have resources. They will also need to have marketing expertise to help design, develop, and maintain a website, printed materials, and most importantly, signage. You really need to make sure that you have appropriate signage and considerable amount of signage so that people can find where they're needing to go very easily. Also, ongoing, like I said, the planning is always ongoing, and in order to have that ongoing planning, you need to make sure that you work in evaluation of what the tourist satisfactions and needs are, and then be always constantly planning and improving so that you can create a very sustainable industry. Now, for today's session, we're going to really just kind of focus in on that local support, and so which is the first of the tourism capacities. I'm going to turn it over to the presentation over to Kathy Dothage, who will present a few methods and tools that we have found helpful in engaging the local citizens when considering if tourism is a good fit for their area. So with that, Kathy, it's to you.
Thank you, Connie. After your group has determined whether heritage tourism is a good fit for them economically, organizationally, and publicly, the next step would be to define the area. When making this decision, you need to keep in mind the number and quality of attractions and services you have available to plan or that you have available or plan to create. When visiting an area, tourists are much more likely to choose an area where there are multiple attractions for them to visit and are more likely to return to the area when there are ongoing events throughout the year. Visitors are also more likely to stay in an area longer and spend more money when there are multiple things for them to do and enjoy. As you see on this slide, is a map of the Alcona County, Michigan Quilt Trail route. And so this has taken, instead of using a specific thing, it has taken a region. So you can either do by community, in a city that may be as small as a neighborhood. It could be the county. The county that I work in is very small, and so what we do is we have partnered with cities on either side of us, or communities on either side of us, so that we can capitalize on their visitors or extend their visiting stay. Can be a geographic area or can be a region. Obviously, in anything, the more people or the more diversity of individuals involved, the more complicated it gets. So if you have a region, then you're going to have more individuals involved and may be much more complicated, and therefore may have more issues. Once you've taken note of the considerations, an assessment of the defined area may be your next step. This slide shows the suggestions from the National Trust for Historic Preservations. So their objectives, this organization says the objectives for assessments would be to gather a wide variety of opinions and suggestions from stakeholders, to learn about the community's region or defined area's history and culture, to evaluate the current visitor experience, to evaluate current visitor services including signage that Connie already talked about, operating hours, and hospitality, to evaluate current local marketing efforts, to assess the level of public and private support for tourism, and to assess organizational capacity for program development. The next thing that I'm going to talk about and share with you are the community assessment tools. These are some very basic tools and things that we're going to talk about them very shortly. There's lots of more information on them available, so we'll just give you a sort of just a thumbnail sketch of what these are. The first one being the appreciative inquiry approach. It is an asset-based approach. It starts with the belief that every organization and every person in the organization has positive aspects that can be built upon. It asks questions like, what's working well? What's good about what you are currently doing? And then builds upon the past and current successes of a community to expand existing events or attractions or develop new opportunities or attractions. The next one being the SWOT analysis. What SWOT stands for are strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it is a communication tool and a great way to illuminate the community about sustainable tourism. Using a very simple diagram or a very simple opportunity, the community members review the community's internal strengths and weaknesses and external opportunities and threats that will affect their successful tourism development. A SWOT analysis can reveal many aspects of the community, things like key issues that may impact the balance of the tourism plan, communication abilities of the community, overall attitude of local participants, and that would be both negative and positive, the cohesiveness and capacity of the community to work together, excuse me, and government and political structure. To do a SWOT analysis, a facilitator uses a 4-quadrant table. This is used to brainstorm and analyze all the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the community plan to increase tourism. First, the facilitator asks the group to list as many strengths of their plan as possible. These strengths will be internal, relating directly to their community. Second, the group will be asked to list all of the known weaknesses of that plan. The facilitator will want to reassure and encourage the group to be honest, because if they can identify their shortcomings, they can possibly overcome them. Like strengths, these answers will also be internal. Then the facilitator will work on the opportunities quadrant of the template and have the group list all the opportunities, external or from outside the community, that can help them in reaching their goal. Next, move to the 4th quadrant and ask the group to list all of the threats which, like opportunities, will be external. It is important to identify threats so you're prepared for what you may face, and so you can figure out how to avoid or overcome these threats ahead of time if possible. After the group has completed their list, then a facilitator can take this input from the group and analyze it. It should be pretty clear what the negatives and the positives of the plan are, and what issues or situations that the community will need to overcome it in order to move forward with their plan. The next tool is a survey, probably one that most of us are familiar with, but it is another way you can learn the strengths and weaknesses and also to assess public opinion. A good survey can reveal a wealth of useful and easily quantifiable information. A true needs assessment survey has some common characteristics. There's a preset list of questions, a predetermined sample of people. These people are chosen in advance to answer these particular questions. They are done either by personal interview, by phone, or by written response. That would be like a mail-in survey, mailed out to individuals or picked up by individuals and then mailed into a single spot. And the results of this survey are tabulated, summarized, distributed, discussed, and most importantly, utilized by the group. The size and complexity of the survey will depend on the information you're wanting to poll and the financial resources you have at your disposal. Depending on your resources, and those resources would be time, money, and people, a needs assessment survey may take many different forms. It can be as informal as asking around with people you know in your community, or it can take the form of a professionally written survey that is mailed to hundreds of people. The results of the survey then guide your future action. The asset inventory is a technique for collecting information about a community or a region. It's similar to a shopkeeper taking stock of his merchandise and then checking it off the list. An asset inventory works best at a community meeting or a large gathering where people in the community can work together to complete the list. Community mapping is a tool used to reveal different people's perspectives about the community. In this facilitated activity, groups of individuals draw a map of their community or the defined area and mark points of interest and how often they visit those points. Then the facilitator leads a discussion about the maps, while another facilitator records the discussion. This activity helps communities identify, use, and access of community resources and compare perception of the importance of various resources. A panel discussion is a great tool to inform and educate a community on a particular issue. A panel discussion is basically a group interview done before a larger group of observers. A facilitator will guide 4 to 5 experts through an interview with carefully designed questions in order to draw upon their expertise and to learn how leaders in their particular field feel and believe about a specific issue. A larger group of observers then have an opportunity to ask additional questions that build on or expand the facilitator's questions. The last tool that I'm going to talk about today is a focus group. And a focus group can be used in assessing a community's preferences and opinions on a particular issue. It is a guided discussion involving 6 to 10 people who have some similarities, like a similar age group, status in a program, or have information about a specific area. It is also a carefully planned discussion conducted to engage community leaders in a meaningful discussion about their community and to establish relationships and identify underlying issues the community might face. Questions are carefully designed and shared with participants prior to the meeting. Then during the meeting, the facilitator will ask the questions and give time for all the participants to respond. All responses are then recorded either electronic or by another facilitator. These are not individual assessment tools. Oftentimes they can be combined and used at different times in the planning process. As I said, these are just a few of the assessment tools that we've shared. There are 2 more additional tools, and these are on websites. So the URLs are provided: the Tourism Development Capacity Index, or the TDCI, and the Tourism Social Indicators. So probably it would be easiest if you went to the if you went to the PowerPoint that's provided on the website, and then you can just click on those because those are pretty long URLs. If planned and monitored actively, heritage tourism can bring many benefits to rural communities. Heritage tourism brings in money, helps to promote the area to outside interest, and can ultimately result in bringing in additional investors. Local citizens of the area have the opportunity to meet and learn from others, and most importantly, heritage tourism gives local citizens the opportunity to share their culture and way of life to the outside world. However, heritage tourism brings with it costs as well as benefits. Economic, social, cultural, and environmental impacts are inevitably elements of the development of tourism. As a result, the cost of heritage tourism should be evaluated carefully before a community decides to engage in this kind of economic strategy. Heritage tourism can lower the level of privacy that local citizens enjoy. It can attract illegal activity or persons who prey on tourists, and it can stress an area's infrastructure with constant repairs to road, addressing litter, and the need for the area to present a unified, neat appearance. So need to do comprehensive assessment before individuals or groups proceed with this economic opportunity. Before we go to questions, I just want to reiterate what Julie said at the very first, and thank you for Gail and Cheryl who have provided their information in the chat box. So if you are interested in either either doing peer review for the website, for the web resources, or if you would like to receive the announcement when it goes live, or both, just put those in the, just go ahead and put your information into the chat box. So we appreciate you doing that. We want to have this the best that we can, and we know that's best when more people review it and more people are involved. Connie and I want to thank you for listening to our presentation today, and now is your opportunity to ask questions. I'm going to monitor, and then I'm going to let Connie take all of the questions. You'll notice that on top of the slide for mine and Connie's contact information, that there in fact has been there's been a summary webinar evaluation. So if you can go ahead and fill that out while we're taking questions, or while you're thinking, that would be great. Connie, we have just overwhelmed people with all the information, and it looks like lots of people already knew.
I see that Larry has put up about the community inventory. I did want to mention that that will be posted with the presentation, and that's just a nice tool to use in groups to really get them thinking through what facilities, what assets that their community has, and what other assets that are they going to need. Do they have enough? Do they have enough hotels to put people up? Do they, have restaurants that are open on weekends and evenings? Do they have nighttime entertainment? Just a lot of different things. Helps them just take stock of what they have in their community. So you can find that document. It'll be posted with the presentation PowerPoint.
It appears, Connie, that there are no more questions, or there aren't any questions. Julie, if you want to put back up the slide that shows the other webinars. And I know some people, when they registered for all of them. So the next one will be October the 18th at the same time at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard, 1 p.m. Central. And that would be Organizing for Heritage Tourism. One on the 25th, Planning for Heritage Tourism, November 1st, Implementing. And on the 15th of November, so there would be more space in between those two, Evaluate and Renewing Heritage Tourism. So we appreciate your participation in the webinar today, and if there are no more questions, I'll turn it back to Julie.
Thanks to both Connie and Kathy for their presentation, and thanks to our participants for coming in with us. Again, we would like to invite you to leave your email if we can send you an announcement of our website going public, and if you'd be interested in giving a little look at what we've done and offering any comments, we would appreciate that too. I see Gail has a heritage tourism field trip during one of our webinars, but for everybody, we are recording these, and they're going to be posted on the website. And eventually, we will make links to them on the on our website when it goes public, so that'll be available. Again, these materials are at the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development's website, and if you get to that site, there's a tab for webinars, and that will take you to a site with a left-hand column, and we have a whole section there for heritage tourism. So thank you very much for the notes and for the people willing to review and want information. And Cheryl, you can sign in and record, listen to the recording. Thank you again very much, everybody, and think about attending the rest of these. Thanks and goodbye.